through the Dalai Lama, who, remember, in some days from now will be turning 90, and he has made a very important announcement as he is in McLeodganj. He has announced that he will have his successor after his death. He says that the foundation of the Dalai Lama will elect his successor. And remember, this is also rooted in the traditional Buddhist Tibetan customs, because that's when a successor is chosen of the Dalai Lama, only after his passing. Siddhant joins me to put this into perspective. Siddhant, take us through what is the larger message behind this announcement by the Dalai Lama, and what does it mean for China?
Well, Akanksha, as per what Manoj Gupta is reporting for us, then Dalai Lama's speech decimates plans of China imposing their own man, Pancham Lama. In fact, Dalai Lama made it very clear that my succession will be after me by the trust. Dalai Lama has taken a decisive step to anchor his succession in Tibetan spiritual authority. In fact, Dalai Lama has clearly said continuation of the institution of the Dalai Lama will work on his succession. No external actor or political or religion can interfere. The process will involve consultations with the high Tibetan Lamas and reference to Dharma protectors, reject any claim by China or unauthorized actors, and its continuity with a pan-Buddhist exile-led spiritual framework. Now, top intel sources are telling this to Manoj Gupta that this statement neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through state machinery. It creates a shield around his reincarnation, rooted in tradition and institutional legitimacy.
Stay with me, Siddhant. In fact, those are breaking inputs that we are bringing to our viewers, shared by Security Affairs Editor Mr. Manoj Gupta, referring to the Dalai Lama's speech and that big announcement coming in. What is the larger context? Well, it certainly decimates China's plans, imposing their own Pancham Lama. Top intelligence sources revealing to CNN News 18 that this statement neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through any kind of state machinery. I quickly go back to Siddhant, who will put this into perspective for us. Siddhant, important to also highlight why China was looking towards this big announcement, and does China even have the right to interfere in Dalai Lama's succession, given that it's traditionally rooted in the Tibetan Buddhist custom?
Well, China's position perhaps has been very clear as far as the succession of Dalai Lama is concerned. And this is exactly what Manoj Gupta is reporting, that Dalai Lama's speech decimates plans of China imposing their own Pancham Lama. In fact, China has also been trying to send this message out to the world that how they have preserved the rich Buddhist Tibetan heritage and the monasteries and the places of a Tibetan culture in the whole of Tibet, and China also always wanted to send this message out that how China can take care of the Buddhist community, the traditional Tibetan community living in China. Having said that, now top intel sources are telling this to Manoj Gupta, Akanksha, that this statement by the Dalai Lama today neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through state machinery. Manoj Gupta also says in his report that it creates a shield around his reincarnation, rooted in tradition and institutional legitimacy, making any future Chinese appointed Dalai Lama appear inauthentic. Manoj also has to say that the inclusion of consultations with Mongolian, Russian, Himalayan and Chinese Buddhist communities internationalizes the selection process and signals broad legitimacy beyond India or Dharamshala.
Right.
Operationally, it empowers the exile apparatus, Gaiden Hodrang and plus CTA to begin preparing succession mechanisms discreetly before his passing. So Manoj's report has to say that the succession process of the Dalai Lama will begin after this particular televised statement which he has made, and perhaps making it very clear that it's going to be the office of His Holiness Dalai Lama which will be choosing his successor, the reincarnation of His Holiness Dalai Lama.
Interestingly, Siddhant, that's also in conjunction with what the United States has been calling for. Remember, US lawmakers last year had passed a Tibet Dispute Act, which categorically stated that they will not recognize any Beijing-appointed Dalai Lama, and that this decision to have a successor is going to be chosen by their foundation. So what is the role over here of Washington, say, which is also going to be keeping their eyes on this announcement?
Well, yes, that's right, Akanksha. In fact, yesterday there was, last year, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, there was a delegation also of U.S. lawmakers which visited Dharamshala. In fact, after which they, in fact, came to New Delhi to meet the Indian government officials. So there has always been the backing by and in fact the support from the U.S. government to the entire Tibetan cause. But having said that, Beijing has declared that in the past that selection of the next Dalai Lama must comply with the Chinese law. In fact, the State Religious Affairs Bureau issued the order asserting that the Communist Party's authority over all Tibetan Buddhist reincarnations. The Chinese government insists on using, the dynasty lottery like ritual to approve the next reincarnation, etc., etc. So, China has been speaking about it, and perhaps, United States has always, as you rightly said, passed a bill and perhaps have always stood with the Tibetan cause against the Chinese intention of announcing the reincarnation of the 14th Dalai Lama. Having said that, today in a televised video which has been released by Dalai Lama, Akanksha, two things have been very, very, very being cleared by him. One, that his office has the powers to announce his successor, and second, that no other authority could be announcing the reincarnation.
All right.
So
now let me quickly come to the India angle over here. Remember, India is also home to 1 lakh Tibetan refugees. What will this mean for India? Because remember, Dalai Lama's own spiritual stature as the spiritual leader for these Tibetans also gives India moral weightage when it comes to its own dealings with Beijing.
Well, definitely this particular, development will irritate Beijing. Beijing has definitely been watching the developments very, very closely. But having said that, Akanksha, India has always said this, that Dalai Lama is a religious figure for the government of India. He's a leader of the Buddhist community, and perhaps in that context only, the Indian dignitaries or for that matter, the representatives of the Indian government engages with his office. So India's position has largely been very, very clear when it comes to the government in exile in Dharamshala. They look at it with a religious angle. And they consider Dalai Lama as a religious leader, and perhaps with that context, India engages with Dharamshala. Definitely, China has issues with that, but perhaps in this present context, Akanksha, where there is so much to talk with China bilaterally, in many experts' assessment, this particular development will hold a very little impact on the relations, India's relations with China.
Many thanks to you, Siddhant, for joining in with all those extensive details on that breaking story. Let me quickly go across to Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, who's also joining me on the broadcast. Ambassador Sajjanhar, how do you assess that big announcement coming in? Remember, for years, rather over a decade, everybody had eyes on this announcement that's finally come out. It's not just New Delhi, Beijing, even Washington's going to be watching very closely.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes, this is a matter that has been talked about for quite some time. I think ever since His Holiness celebrated his 80th birthday 10 years ago. People have been speaking about this, that he is getting along in years. So the matter of his reincarnation that would come up, whether he would be able to announce or it will be the reincarnation would be discovered after his demise. But now it appears that, we are just a few days short of His Holiness's 90th birthday. So there might be some announcement, and I think the world is waiting with bated breath. As far as the position of India is concerned, I think it is very much in consonance with what His Holiness and what the Tibetan community the world over has stated, that it is the right and prerogative of the Buddhist organizations and His Holiness himself to declare his successor as to who.
Pardon me, Ambassador, for interrupting you there. I'm also joined in fact, by Yudon Otsiatsang, who's an MP at the Tibetan government, which is in exile. Thank you, Yudon, for joining in. The grand, big announcement that's been made today. How do you respond to this announcement, and what will this mean now for our neighbors?
It is no surprise. I was anticipating this, that way back in 2011, His Holiness had mentioned that when he turns 90, he will have clarity as to whether the institution of the Dalai Lama itself should continue or not. Because he said it depends on the people, the Dharma followers, whether this institution will continue. So today, when he gives this very affirmative kind of statement saying that the institution of Dalai Lama will continue. So that is, I think, very positive for all of us.
Right. And that's interesting that you highlight that there are two big announcements there. A, the succession will happen after the Dalai Lama's
it will
passing.
happen.
And that the institution will continue. So that's indeed heartwarming news.
Very heartwarming.
And important to also highlight how we are now talking about autonomy in choosing that, and how this is an announcement which talks about deep-rooted Tibetan Buddhist customs.
That's right. Well, the statement is very clear that there will be no interference from China or from any other external bodies, except for the members of the Ganden Podang Trust, which is the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And they will consult the various heads of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and our Dharma protectors. So according to tradition, it will happen, the search and the recognition. So that is very clear. So there is no room for any interference of China and any other external factors.
With this announcement coming in from the Dalai Lama, do you think it is also time for the larger international community? Remember, the US lawmakers last year had passed a Tibetan Dispute Act, which acknowledged the Dalai Lama's right to do so, and the fact that they will not be acknowledging any Beijing-appointed successor. What does it mean, and would you also like to send a broader message to all the big democracies in the world?
Definitely. So it's not the Tibetan Dispute Act, it's Tibet Resolve Act. Yeah, and even in the Tibet, the U.S. Congress has passed a very strong resolution recognizing the Dalai Lama's sole authority in the recognition of the 15th Dalai Lama. I think the world, particularly the democratic world, must uphold that and pass resolutions in recognition of that. It's very, very important. And India is the biggest country because we share same culture, same heritage. So, and also India has a vast majority of people who are also Buddhist in the Himalayan belt and also in many states of India. So I think it is, the onus is also on India because this is where the Karam Bhumi of His Holiness is also.
Absolutely.
He was born in Tibet, but he's here. He's spent a large part of his life, working life in India, and Indian government and the people have been very, very kind and hospitable and hosted us for so many years, and we have freely, kind of exercised our rights to our aspirations and our right to self-determination. But now I think this reincarnation of His Holiness also, I think India will play a role, and I hope that India will play a big role in kind of upholding His Holiness's desire and also his affirmation and confirmation that he will be in a free world also, I think that he said in the past. It's not in this statement. He said that my reincarnation will come in a free world, And India, I think, is the most likely country also because this is where he is at the moment. Yeah.
What is the message that you'd like to send out to all of those Tibetans in exile, given that you are representing them and India is also home to 1 lakh refugees from Tibet?
Well, we are all rejoicing the fact that His Holiness is in a very good health. We do not have to worry. Our movement is very strong. We have a unifying and a very strong leader in His Holiness. and he has shown us the path. And we have also very capable people who will follow and who will kind of take this Tibetan movement and keep the spirit alive.
Right.
So there is no need for concern. And despite China's attempts at trying to control the hearts and minds of the Tibetans, they will not succeed. And the world will not, kind of let China kind of control the reincarnation, kind of rule our hearts and minds, and also try to have an upper hand in the religious kind of realm, of which they have no understanding and not even moral credibility,
Right. Yudon, I can just tell you one thing, that on a day you all are rejoicing, all of the Tibetan refugees in India, New Delhi and all of India rejoices and joins you in this sentiment. Many thanks to you for joining on CNN News 18. Heartiest congratulations to the entire community for this big announcement coming in. And as Yudon was also highlighting, that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue, and that is also one big takeaway from that big announcement.